Coming to you from Sherpa Chalet in beautiful downtown Mount Podcastia, it's time for entertainment interviews in the Sherpa screening room. Grab an aisle seat and a bucket of popcorn, but don't crunch too loud or you'll miss the show. Now, here's your host, Jim, the podcast Sherpa.
Hey Rebels, and welcome to the Sherpa Screening Room. Today's episode is definitely a little bit different from what we usually do. And I should start off by saying that there's a little bit of adult themes in this episode. So if you're driving in a car with young kids, maybe you might not want to hear this one out loud, and you can listen to it on headphones later if that works better for you. And maybe you can just switch it over to one of the other episodes that we have, because this week we've been busy with Amazing Women, Incredible Stories. Today's episode is my interview with a lady named Lisa Bagby. And she is working on a book called I Am That Girl. Now, why I Am That Girl? Well, she will explain that in our interview. But a lot of this interview really has to do with judgment, and we all really judge in one way or another. Sometimes we even ask for judgment. Really, don't I say, if you like this show, go on Apple Podcasts and give me a nice review, or iHeartRadio or Stitcher.com. That's me asking for your approval. You're on social media and you post something and you hope that people will give you likes or repost something that you created or retweet or whatever means of social media that you may use. We all seek that out. Don't we ask people, how do I look in this? What do you think of that show? I bought something on Amazon that had a 5-star rating. I'm not buying that stuff with the 1-star rating. So judgment is all over the world. It's pretty universal, I guess, as an emotion. I'd like to ask you something before I go into this interview. What if you were unfairly judged? This is what happened to Lisa Bagby. She was held guilty in the court of public opinion, even though there was no indication that any crime was ever committed. And you can imagine the ordeal that she went through from this point, and she goes into all the details of the story. And you'll also notice that this show was a little bit different in that normally I shorten them for time, and I do a lot of editing to make the pace of the interview go a lot faster. But I didn't think that this would work for this interview. I really want you guys, as the listeners, as my rebels, to hear this interview as it was recorded in real time, I guess you could call it. And you can hear the emotion in Lisa's voice as she's telling her story as well. And I didn't really want to take that away from the power of what she really had to communicate when she was telling her story. So you will notice some moments of silence in between the questions and the answers. It's not really edited at all. I think I fixed a couple little spots. So it's really kind of a raw interview as opposed to the quote unquote slicker ones that I usually give you guys from day to day or week to week. So you will notice a difference in that. But I think you'll understand why I did it once you hear this interview. I don't want to belabor this point anymore. So why don't we just get started and we will listen to my interview with Lisa Bagby, the author of I Am That Girl. Hey there, Rebels. I am here today with a lady named Lisa Bagby, and she is a new author. She is working on a book that is soon to be published. It is called I Am That Girl, and it's about a real life experience that she's been enduring not too long ago. And we're going to get to know her, and we're going to get to hear her story, and you'll be amazed at what you got to hear and, what everything that she's dealing with. It's something that some people don't really want to think could happen to a person, but this actually did happen to her. It does probably get into some sensitive nature. And if Lisa gets upset, we're going to pause and interview, but that'll be all edited out. So I just want you to know that. You can just take a breath. And we always like people to be comfortable here at the Sherpa Chalet.
Thank you.
So how you doing, Lisa?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Good. So you live out in Oregon.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Could you kind of describe the area that you live in? Is it a rural area?
It is very rural, an unincorporated city, probably less than 2,000 people. I live on a dead-end road on a mountain.
So it's very
I don't have close neighbors.
okay. And you're on a farm, right?
Yes, I have a small farm.
Okay. What do you grow on the farm?
I have a garden and I have animals. I have some pigs and a horse and a donkey and chickens.
Okay. And have you lived like that most of your life, or were you in a bigger city, or did you kind of retired to rural life?
Oh, no, I've always been a country girl. I was raised in a town called Fossil. It was 500 people. There was 6 kids in my high school class. So I've always been country.
Okay. Why don't you tell us about the book that you're working on? Tell us about I Am That Girl.
Well, I started the book probably in November of 2019. And the reason I started it was because I had this a really hard couple of years. And I just felt the only way I was going to even begin to get my reputation back was to tell my side, to tell the story, to tell the true story. I didn't want to hide anymore. I sat on this mountain by myself for a couple months. I didn't know what to do. I was looking for answers. I had no friends. No one came. Everyone called me a murderer and a whore. My 20-year-old son left the property due to the harassment. He quit his job and quit college. And he moved to the city with his sister to get off the family-owned property, to be left alone, to live in peace. So that was the first time ever that I was really alone in my life. I lost my husband to cancer March 2nd, 2018. And that was the worst day of my life. My life changed. I lost everything. I had to get up. I had to learn to do everything myself. It was a very traumatic time. It was hard. So with the strange turn of events, I just decided after almost giving up my life that I needed to get up and I needed to tell my story just to be left alone and hopefully maybe to reach someone else that was going through the same thing. To say, if you feel like your life doesn't matter, it does. It matters to someone. If you feel like there's no one there, that's just not true. There's people there. It may not be people that you know, but if you reach out, there is help and there is people to talk to. There's a lot of kindness in the world. As much hate as there is, I believe there is as much kindness. So I just decided to get up and I started writing. And every page I wrote, it was healing. My tears just ran onto the paper and I just kept writing and writing. And it was very therapeutic.
Okay, well, I can understand that because you probably felt for a while there was no one that you could talk to. So at least you were just getting all those emotions out on paper or on the computer screen, as it were.
Correct.
So why don't we start a couple of years back? Now, how long were you married initially?
We were married for about 10, 12 years, but I've known him all my life. Basically, we dated for a long time. His dad was best friends with my dad. They fished together. We all fished together. We were all a close family.
And when you got married, was it his farm? It was a farm that the both of you bought together, and you just found this nice remote location?
No, it was his family farm. He grew up on it.
Okay.
And his mother lived here for 90 years. Her mother bought it for her. It was just been passed down from generation to generation.
Okay. And then how long was your husband sick for? I'm sorry to hear of his passing.
He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and he passed away in 30 days.
So then you found yourself, like you said, you were by yourself. Your kids were they living in the house at the time or no?
My 20-year-old son was. My daughter was older and she and my grandson had their own place in the city.
Okay. So at least there was your son there to talk to for the time before everything started, before really the walls started kind of closing in a little bit on you, right?
Yes.
For lack of a better term.
Yes, exactly.
So you were dealing with, living on your own as a widow and, raising your son, even though he was old enough. At least he wasn't like a small child or anything like that. Yes. But it was just surviving without your other half there. That was probably the hardest thing for you.
Yes, he was the love of my life, and we were partners with everything. There wasn't anything that we did that we didn't do together besides go to work every other moment. We were always together. He was supposed to be my forever.
I'm really sorry that doesn't happen. Unfortunately, there's not much that we can do about that when that happens. And I know that's part of your book too, with coming back from just that kind of loss, as well as ties in with everything else that we're going to discuss in our conversation.
Yes.
So you were by yourself for about how long before you met somebody?
About a year and a half. And I wasn't looking for anyone.
Okay.
I wasn't ready to date. I didn't go to bars. I didn't go out. I wasn't on social media looking for a date. I just wasn't ready. I was, every day I would still cry, and I was learning to be self-supportive and strong and using a chainsaw and cut wood and take care of the animals. And it was a lot to take care of without including another guy in the picture.
You really had your own kind of life there. And like you said, because it's different, living in the country, it would have to be someone who would understand that kind of life as well.
Exactly.
Right. Because you weren't ready to, okay, well, let's live in the city now and just drop everything, because you still had your obligation to the farm and the animals.
Yes. And I've always been a very private person. My husband and I both were. Our life was here on the farm or fishing or hunting. It was never going to town. It was never going to bars. It was never going out even to eat at a restaurant. If we wanted to eat out, we would build a fire and cook outside. If we wanted to camp, we'd go on the mountain somewhere and camp.
So that was really your life on the farm. That was your whole biosphere. Your whole plane of existence there. Was that fair to say? Yes,
this is my home. This is all I know.
That's fair enough. I mean, that's what happens with people, and it's such a different life. And you said being country oriented for just about all your life, to go through a big change when you've already dealt with a lot of personal trauma, that doesn't make it easy either. You can't go in with blinders on and everything like that. It's kind of hard. I'm sure like your past and all your time with your husband probably comes back to you when I wonder if he would have liked doing this, or am I walking away from this? There's probably a lot that goes through your mind.
Yes. There's not a day that goes by that I still don't think about him, and I still wish he was here.
Ultimately, you did meet someone. How did you meet this person?
I had an elderly friend, 75, 80 years old, and she used to own a ranch, a big ranch, and he worked on her ranch for years, right out of high school through adulthood, until he accepted a job driving a train. He would build fences and work with her cattle and stuff, and she just adored this child. I shouldn't say child. She adored him from the moment she met him. She thought he was the greatest guy in the world. She would refer to him as her son because she never had children. And he was 38 at the time. And she introduced us. And she's like, he's been married one time. He has no children. You'd be the second woman that he'd ever been with. And he was great. He wasn't handsome, but he was kind. He was gentle. He was probably the kindest man I've ever met in my life. He would open the doors. He would say the right things. And he befriended me for a couple months before I even considered dating him. And when we started dating, I fell for him hard. I'm like, he knew I was looking for that one guy. He knew I didn't want to go through 10 guys to find him. He knew that I wasn't dating and I wasn't interested in anyone. That was the furthest thing from my mind. He knew I cried every day. With him, my tears began to dry up, and I saw him 2 days a week for 2.5 months. We would always do a great adventure. I started leaving the property because he made me feel safe. So we would go on hikes away from my mountain. And I started feeling comfortable. I started getting out. And it made me feel better not to just sit here all the time. Mm-hmm. So I believed in him and I trusted him. I fell in love with him. And there was no red flags.
Okay. Did he live a far distance from you?
Yes, he did. He actually drove a train. So his home was in Walla Walla, Washington, and he worked in Auburn, Washington. So he actually had a couple homes. And at this point, I don't even know what the truth is or how many homes he had or how many wives he had or anything. So from what I knew, he worked out of Auburn and he lived in Walla Walla, and he drove train from Auburn to Portland to Walla Walla and back. And then on his 2 days off, that were always different, then we would do things together. He would usually come here. Sometimes we'd stay here and cut firewood. And sometimes we'd go on great adventures.
Did he eventually want you to come away from the farm? Was that a long-term plan for the both of you, or you really were just taking it every day as it came?
Actually, he loved it here. He said that he felt at home here. And he said that this is the first home that he's ever had. And it was always up to me my idea if I wanted to go hiking another place. He never, he was happy wherever we were and whatever we did.
Okay, so even though he was from a distance when he was with you, all was well in the world with him then?
Yes.
Okay, and obviously for you as well, if you were together that time.
Yes.
Sometime into your dating period, did you get engaged, or you were just basically dating?
Well, he asked me to marry him, and he asked me, he wanted to go to Las Vegas and get married. He gave me a ring. I accepted the ring, and I definitely would have married him. It would have probably took me a little bit longer to get to that point, but I thought he was the one guy. I thought he was that guy. I thought he was perfect.
But then things came to a very serious change a little bit down the line. You want to tell your version of what happened, so this way we can kind of understand it a little bit better?
Yes. On September 1st, well, let me go back a bit.
Sure.
So for about a week before September 1st, he started acting, I don't know, a little distant. He was unaccountable for sometimes. He would be on his phone, and I walked in the room. He was real jittery, and he'd hide his phone. And I'm like, what's wrong? I'm like, is there something you need to tell me? Do you want to talk? Because I had this gut feeling that something was wrong, and it just wouldn't go away. And I was scheduled for a total hysterectomy on October 1st because I had a 7-centimeter mass. And so I don't know if he was just nervous about that or what, but I knew something was going on because he was nervous about my surgery more than I was. So on September 1st, he came to my house for that weekend. And I woke up that morning and I was hugging his back, and I kind of set up to give him a kiss on the cheek. I didn't know if he was awake or not. And he was on his phone. And I caught a glance at the phone, and I'm not even sure what I saw, but it was a picture, and it was a picture of a person. And they were wearing a half shirt, and I said, is that a guy? I said, oh my God, is that a guy? And he jumped up. He actually scared me by the look on his face and the manner in which he jumped up. And he dropped his phone like a hot potato on the bed. And he put on his pants and his shoes. He grabbed his black bag that was sitting on the floor. on his side of the bed. And he left the house. And the last time I saw him, he was walking up my driveway, and I saw him out my bedroom window. And I just watched him. I didn't know what he had in the bag. And I didn't know what he was involved with. And that's the last time I saw him.
You need a minute? Okay.
No.
All right. So now, unfortunately, he turned up deceased.
Yes. I found him 17 days later.
And
I called. I've never met any of his friends. I never met his family. I don't know why. I was just never asked to. We were always busy having fun. And so I called and I reported him missing. And on September 2nd, search and rescue came out in the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department. And they asked me questions, and I gave him his phone. And I went out with them searching for him. And I took him to all the places that we would hike on the mountain, because behind my property is thousands of acres that you can hike on. And we spent a lot of time up there having picnics and such. So I went out with them and I showed them all the places that were special to us, and we had a picnic or whatever. And that evening, they called the search off. They told me that he was either one of his connections had come and picked him up at the end of the road on the highway, or that he was at some bar someplace in Portland. And so I came home and I searched the next week every day by myself. No one else came. I would search from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. I called everyone that was on his phone to see if anyone's seen him. And then the next weekend, this Seattle guys, the railroad workers that I used to work with, they asked if they could come down and if I would show them the mountain. And I said yes. So I invited them to my property, and we walked through my property. And I took them around on the mountain where we hiked. And I believe that evening, I tried to be nice to them. That evening, one of them messaged me and called me a stupid cunt. And I thought, okay, well, that isn't going the way that I had it planned. And I just kept getting messages from them that I was a murderer and how come they never met me, and just harassing things, horrible things they would say to me. And I just kept searching. And I think they went out a couple times and searched. I think they saw a bear and they got scared. And to me, I see bears all the time and wildlife. So and then the morning of September 17th. Okay, I'll go back a little bit. So a week after that, I called, or the deputy on the case, I probably shouldn't say his name. And I told him that I was being harassed and I wanted his stuff out of here because I didn't know how responsible I was for it. I had 2 of his trucks sitting here in my driveway. He had a lot of money, so they were nice trucks. And I had them chained together because I was afraid of the Seattle guys. And then his wife started calling me, and I didn't know that he was married. And she wanted to come get his stuff. And I just didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to believe at this point. Everyone wanted it. Everyone wanted the vehicles. And so I just called the sheriff and I asked them to come get his belongings. That I didn't feel comfortable giving it to anyone. I didn't know what to do with them, but I didn't want them here because I was being harassed so badly over it. I was scared to sleep at night because of these Seattle guys. So the sheriff's department came the next day and they took all of his stuff from my house and they asked me some more questions. And basically the same questions. If I've heard anything, if I found anything. The answers were all no. And sorry.
It's okay.
And so they took all of his belongings and the harassment didn't stop. And the reports, there was false reports that he was buried on my property. There was false reports that he tried to claw his way out. There was some of them were redacted and some of them weren't. Some of them are still on the internet. I was being harassed by my neighbors. I would drive by to get home or go to the store and they would take pictures of me. They would take pictures of my house. I live on a mountain. I don't have street lights. And I was scared. My son was scared.
Sure, I can understand that.
I would have threats like from the Seattle guys, there's 50 of us and there's only one of you. And it was true. And I knew that. And I know that everything that he was involved with on everything that the sheriff's office and I saw on his phone, I felt like I was lucky to be alive in the first place. There was illegal activity. There was immoral stuff. There was stuff I still don't understand. Language that I don't understand that I have to Google to find out what it even means. So it was very upsetting. And I just continued searching. And on the morning of September 17th, I went out with my dogs. And search and rescue searched that day. And then they came back another time and they searched my property, 30 acres. And I thought that they had searched my property. When they searched the property, to me, that they searched the whole entire property. They brought in an excavator and dug up a suspicious mound that was reported about. Well, this suspicious mound was a contractor came up. I had a contractor come up and dig some test holes in March of that year to find out if I had ground for a rock quarry, because there's a rock quarry across the highway from me that he owned. And we were going to go in a partnership and make another rock quarry. And that was a contractor. So that was the suspicious mound that was reported, that they brought an excavator up and dug up and found nothing. And they verified that that was the contractor that came up and dug that hole. So I thought they'd searched my 30 acres. So I would search and I would go up to the thousands of acres that bordered my property. And I would search from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. I'd go through the forest with pink ribbon and I would mark the areas that I would walk through so that I would know where I'd already been, because it's a forest and it's easy to get lost. But I've lived here. I've hiked up there. I know my way around. And I thought if anyone else was looking, they would see my markers and know that it had already been searched, kind of thing. But I never saw anyone up there searching besides me. So on the morning of September 17th, I have 5 dogs. And we got up early and we headed out the same trail that I always walk down. I've walked down a million times. I walked search and rescue down to get to the forest. And when I got to the bottom of the valley, my dogs took off and they went to the left. And usually they just stay on the trail and they know exactly where we're going and they love to hike with me. So they just go through the forest on the trail and they're never a problem. Well, on this day, they went to the left and I called them back and they came back. And they were very excited and they went through the brush again. And I thought, please, God, no. So very dense vegetation, blackberries, grass, brush, trees. And I crawled through kind of the hole where my dogs have made a little trail. And I got to this place where I could stand up out of the blackberry bushes and brush. And my dogs were there. And I called my dogs back. And there was the most horrible smell that I ever smelled before in my life. And I was scared. And I pulled the branch back and I looked under this bush. And I saw his shoe and his black pants. And basically, bones. I don't remember everything I saw. And I fell to the ground. And I called the detective. And I couldn't talk and I couldn't breathe. And the only thing I could say was shoe. And she said, "You found a shoe?" And I said, "No, I found him." And she said that she would send an ambulance. I told her no. And she said they would meet me at the gate. So I crawled out of there on my hands and knees, vomiting. And I had to make it back to the gate, which was a ways away. So I got there and I waited. And one deputy showed up at that point, and I walked him back to the area. And then I had to walk out again. And then the other deputies were there, and I walked them to the top of the hill, and that's the furthest I can make it. And they said it would be okay, that they would contact him for the rest of the directions. And beside them, they found a .45 caliber, a shell casing, and a bottle of hard alcohol. And I didn't even know he drank hard alcohol. Never seen him drink hard alcohol. He would have a couple of beers. And that's the only alcohol I ever saw him drink. I never went through his bag. I didn't think I should. I never thought about it. I didn't think I needed to. I didn't think that I couldn't trust him. Had I known he had a gun in the bag, I would have followed him up the driveway. And I would have taken the bag. I wouldn't have let him leave. But I didn't know. So it was reported that he was found buried on my property. Horrible things were reported. So the harassment and the bullying kept continuing, still continues today. And it was so bad that I didn't want to live anymore.
I just wanted to end it. And I was going to go to the railroad tracks where he would have been driving that train. And I was going to stand in front of that train. And I was going to look at those Seattle guys in the face. And I was going to end it because I felt like my life didn't matter. And I had no one to talk to. No one reached out to me. No one came to check on me. No one said, I'm sorry for your loss. It was just called terrible names. It was never a homicide investigation. I was never taken in for questioning. I was never arrested. They told me that I wasn't a suspect. I was only a witness. Mm-hmm. But still, these things happened to me, and I never stood up for myself, and I never defended myself because, in a way, I didn't feel like I needed to defend myself. And second of all, I just didn't have the strength.
So ultimately, you were found guilty in the court of public opinion and nothing else. Just for the mere fact that you knew this man and that you were the one who found him, but there wasn't anything that directly connected to him apart from the fact that you had a relationship, but you hadn't seen him in 2.5 weeks.
Exactly. And the false reports were a big part of it because they said my property had been searched with cadaver dogs and drones and dug up with excavators. And the truth of the matter is they searched a third of my property. The only spot they searched were the suspicious mound, as they called it, mm-hmm. where they confirmed it was dug by the contractor checking for the right kind of rock to make a rock quarry. Mm-hmm. And then they stopped the search. They knew what this guy did. They told me what he did. They said he's probably at a bar. He committed suicide. They knew from these emails, it was clear as day of why he would do this. I don't even know what all kind of illegal stuff was on the phone. I saved some emails and I saved as much as I could. And I still haven't read through it all because it's just too hard. Sure. But false reports and the Seattle guys were the reason this got blown up so bad. And they just kept it going, partially because I believe that some of them were involved in his wrongdoings.
That was going to be actually my next question. Did you, if you suspected that, these men who were harassing you probably knew more than they were letting on to?
Yes. And I think that's why through intimidation, they thought they could silence me, and they did. I was scared. There's 50 of them and one of me, and these are full-grown men. And they knew that I was alone. They knew my husband died. And they knew where I lived. The reporter here in town reported my full name and my address. I had a sheriff's deputy living on my property that rented a big shop from me down below, and he worked at the same sheriff's department. He knew that I hadn't done anything. He went out with search and rescue. They harassed him that he had to move out. So, yeah, I was here alone. So in November, we decided it was best for my son just to leave because he was so miserable as well. And I only want good things for him. And that's when I got up and I said, this isn't okay. And I've lost everybody. And I may stand alone, but I'm still standing. and I have a story to tell. And I'm going to tell it in hopes that I can just help one person.
Sure.
And I take my life back. I'm going to take my life back so my son can come home, so my daughter can come home without being harassed to bring my grandson to visit me. So that I can sleep at night and not be scared. And so I just started to write.
And all of this that you were dealing with, I mean, this isn't something that happens to people every day. You really have no foundation to like, well, what do I do next? This was just life coming right at you. And, what else could you do? You had to really kind of ultimately grab the bull by the horns and say, well, wait a minute, I still have a life to live, and here's how I'm going to live it.
Yes. And I had no other option. You know what my other option was, and I chose not to take that route. But I had a beautiful life before, a fairy tale life. And that saying that time heals all wounds is just not true. Time gives you the strength and the tools to use to build a new life. You can never build the same life you had before, but you can build something better. And so that's my goal, is to just build something that I'm as happy as I was then, where I can enjoy my mountain and my property and my life. I'm not a nobody. I'm somebody.
Absolutely.
And I did nothing wrong. There's nothing I could have done different. He drove a train. He had no record. There was no red flags. There was nothing I could have done differently to know about this guy. Nothing. Mm-hmm. So I did absolutely nothing wrong.
Let me take you back. I mean, this is going to be a little bit difficult, to that day that you said you were going to go on the train and just on the train tracks and just end it all. What made you change your mind? What popped into your head and said, you know what? I'm a valuable person. I have a life. I shouldn't be taking my own life over something that I had nothing to do with.
If it's hard to explain it if you've never dealt with the trauma, if you've never dealt with, I don't even know what to call it, PTSD, or what it is that I had or I have. But it's like some days you walk around in a haze. And so it's like you walk around in a haze and you can see people move their mouths, but you can't hear them talk. Mm-hmm. And you know that you're walking, but you can't feel the ground underneath your feet. And you're just numb. And that's how hurt I was. That's how broken I was. And as I walked across the train trestle, and I just waited for the whistle. And I knew from his stories that nothing could stop the 400 pounds of raging metal. There was just no way of stopping it. So I knew that they would see me there and they'd have to face me one last time and to see what they did, so maybe they wouldn't do it to other people. They were bullies and they were rude. And I don't know what happened. All I know is that I ended up in the river. And when I opened my eyes, it was silence. I could hear the water, and the numbness was gone, and I could feel the water. But I didn't know that I was in the water. So I swam up to the top of the water, and I breathed, I took a breath of air, and I looked up, and there was an eagle in the tree. It was sunny, and I could hear the birds, and I could hear the river, and I could feel. And those were things that I hadn't done in a long time. So I swam over to the rocks, and I got out of the river. And I just sat there, and it was peaceful. And just that moment, I just asked God, I'm like, I can't do it on my own. And I thought, as soon as I took my first breath, it was like I was reborn. And I knew that I was going to be okay.
Sure.
So every day I just got up and I just continued. And if I have to be broken, I'm going to be beautifully broken. And if I have to be damaged, it's going to be okay.
I find it kind of ironic that the thing that you seem to be most blessed with in your life, you know, being around nature and being very comfortable with it, when you came off those tracks, you probably saw it in a whole new light, that it's okay. You know, we can get on with our lives from here.
Yes, like I said, I could feel again. I could hear again. I could see clearly. It wasn't foggy. And I knew that I wasn't ever really alone, because I've been to church one time in my life. I believe in God, but I'm not, I was never like baptized or a follower or anything. I just lived my life the best that I could. But at that moment, I truly believed that I wasn't alone, and I was never alone, but I don't know. But I saw it clearly, and I could hear, and that I felt blessed, because I just needed that part, I guess, to be taken away so that I could move forward, because I needed to feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kept fighting every day, and I kept riding and walking and hiking and just doing the things I love, hiking for hours and listening to music and letting myself heal. If I got tired, I would allow myself to heal. I would rest. I would make sure that I was eating. I was making sure that I was doing positive things and reading positive things and praying. And I just allowed my body to heal, my mind to heal, and my soul to heal. It's still hard. It's still hard to read things and think about him. I've had days where I try to hate him, and that I can never hate him. The area where I found his body, I planted flowers, and together we made an angel out of horseshoes because I love horses, and out of railroad spikes because he loved the railroad. And we welded them together and made an angel, and that's where I placed the angel. And I go there and I sit, and it's not even about forgiveness. It's not my place to forgive him. It's just about choosing what I want to remember and how I want to remember him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't choose to remember the bad things, because that really didn't have anything to do with me. And I just remember him, and I'm glad that he felt like this was his home, and I'm okay.
That's the best thing that you can do. You were saying earlier that there are people in this world who are wonderful. Were there any special people? I know you said a lot of this was on your own. Was there anyone that you could confide in, or who at least kind of got an understanding of what you were dealing with?
Well, like I said, I'm such a private person that I don't have any close friends, but I did take a woman's self-defense class after my husband passed away, and there was one person there that worked at the Lincoln City Police Department. And he actually went to school with my husband, and he was great. And he was so informative. And he told me he would check on me and a couple times and ask me if I need anything to reach out to him. But like I said, I was such a private person that I never reached out. I never reached out because I don't know if I was too embarrassed or I didn't want to bother anyone, or I felt like I said, I was just numb. My mind didn't even work. Half the time I didn't even know what day it was. It's like I lost my memory. I had a hard time with words. I couldn't talk. I had a lump in my throat. Even if I wanted to talk, I couldn't. And then there was another lady that came up. I actually needed some gravel. And she came up and she just said, I can feel your pain and I'm sorry. And she hugged me and she prayed for me. And I just cried. I mean, I couldn't stop the tears. And she would always send me a prayer every morning on my phone, and she still does. Like I said, I couldn't talk to her. The lump in my throat and the tears, but she was appreciated, and she still is every day. And I tell her that, I text. We don't really have a relationship, but she always sends me something, and I say, "You're appreciated," and that is true. I do appreciate her. And then my children and my dad. That's about it.
Okay. And sometimes that's all you need, though, as long as there's at least one voice saying, hey, you're all right. You're going to be okay. Now, we'll go back to your book a little bit. I guess we kind of came full circle with this. What do you want to get across in your book? I mean, apart from how to survive all of this trauma and this heartbreak in your life, and be able to have that strength to move on. I'm putting it horribly. I know you can probably do it a lot better than I can.
I don't know. That was pretty good.
I gave it a shot.
I guess if I just get it out there that if you can't talk, if you can't feel, let someone in. I mean, it might be that person delivering gravel. It might be the person you met in a class. You don't have to be strong. You don't have to be embarrassed. You don't have to feel like you let anyone down. You don't have to be in control of everything. Just reach out to someone. There is someone there that has been where you are or near wherever you are. And there is someone there that understands and is willing to talk to you. There is help. Don't just think your life is worth nothing. Don't let people bully you. Stand up. You may stand alone, but stand up and take your life back and stop this, because the more people that stand up against bullying and harassment, and I honestly don't believe it has anything to do with color. It happens. It happens to anyone. It could happen to me, you, at any point in your life, and it's not okay. So if one person stands up, maybe that'll help another person stand up and another person stand up, and it'll be like a chain, and this will stop. This has to stop.
Yeah. And really, you've kind of said it in a roundabout way, but ultimately you're braver than you think. I mean, we've never met before, and you were able to have the courage to sit and tell me this story of how much you hurt, and that you can move on from all of this, and you want to share that with people too, to give them inspiration too. So there's, you're showing your value as a person there. You may have felt that you didn't have that value, but look what a horrible event did for you and what you will probably ultimately do for other people.
Yes. And that's my goal. My goal isn't to hurt anyone. My goal isn't to spread his dirt or his secrets. I
will include, and I have included some of them so people understand. But my goal is just to help that person. And that's why the title of my book is I Am That Girl, because I could be anyone's wife. I could be anyone's mother, anyone's daughter. This could happen to anyone. Mm-hmm. And just remember, you're not alone. And stand up. And if people talk to you, talk about you, like, walk with your head held high and walk by them and say, I am that girl. You're right. Own it. This happened to me. And it was hard as hell. And people don't necessarily need to know how low I was. But I want them to know I am that girl. I'm not ashamed of where I've been. I'm not ashamed of what happened to me. I did nothing wrong. And it could happen to you.
Very, very true. I mean, you've definitely brought a lot of truth to this interview. And Lisa, I want to really thank you for coming on the show. And, this is a different kind of show from what I normally do, but I'm glad that I got the chance to talk to you because this is a real life thing. It's not Hollywood. It's not, hey, I got a podcast and I'm going to talk like this. This is a real event, and that you can come through on the other side, and you're living proof of that.
Yes. Thank you.
Right. So thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Attention, rebels of the Sherpalution. Today's podcast is being brought to you by Audible. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa.
Thanks again for checking into the Sherpa Screening Room. It's me, Jim, the podcast Sherpa. I hope that you have enjoyed this interview. Very different, huh? A little intense. But we like to switch it up here in the Sherpa Chalet, right? So let's keep an eye open for Lisa's book, I Am That Girl, and I'm sure it will be somewhere on your favorite online bookstore or maybe your local bookstore. Keep an eye open. And don't forget, Amazing Women, Incredible Stories Week will continue tomorrow. And I will be speaking with a lady named Kat Lively. And Kat hosts a podcast called Calling Old Hollywood. And you're really going to enjoy this. She was a lot of fun, really interesting stuff, too, what she had to say, especially if you're a fan of classic Hollywood, because Kat's pretty young, actually, and she loves those old movies, and she had a lot to say, and I enjoyed having her on the show. So check it out tomorrow. Okay, Mr. Bruce, why don't we just show everybody the door, and we'll see everybody back tomorrow, okay? I know it's a long walk back to the Sherpa Chalet, but don't worry, you'll make it. Okay. See you tomorrow, rebels. Viva la Sherpalution.
Thanks for listening to the Sherpa Screening Room. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast. I'm Mr. Bruce, and this has been a Sherpalu Studios production. Viva la Sherpalution.